Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I am very excited to be partnering with MEEDEN Art again, and I am going to be showing you these beautiful professional watercolor brushes that they have. This is a new product that they have, and I'm going to be demoing how I paint a thimbleberry blossom and leaf using them. So if you would like to learn how to paint botanicals in less time using watercolor and ink, then keep on watching this video. So let's get started with our thimbleberry painting. I always start off by creating a border and adding in my common and Latin names before inking my drawing. I'm using my smallest nib waterproof ink pen to do the line drawing of the actual botanicals, which is a 0.05 nib, and I'm making sure that I get all the little serrations on the edge of this leaf to make sure that it's realistic and capturing that beautiful detail. I'm also making sure that I don't make the veins completely straight and there's some wiggle in them, and that I'm capturing the irregularities of the actual plant and not just making it like an AI drawing. I keep my reference photo nice and handy right by my drawing as I am inking it, just to make sure that I get all the details laid in correctly, and then I use my kneaded eraser to lift off any of the excess graphite so that doesn't get trapped under my watercolor, since watercolor is such a transparent medium. So here are the beautiful professional MEEDEN watercolor brushes. They are a mop type brush, like a squirrel mop, but they are synthetic. So the synthetic squirrel hair replicates the exact water holding capacity and silky responsiveness of natural hair, empowering you to master your washes, gradients, and add intricate details with ethical confidence. I'm starting off painting the flower, and if you've never watched any of my full-length classes or other YouTube videos about painting white flowers, I always start with my Botanical gray mix, which is a mix of light red and French ultramarine. You could also use burnt sienna in place of light red, and it makes this beautiful transparent neutral bluey gray color, and you can create warmer or cooler versions of it to help create more depth in your painting. And this is what I use to paint white flowers, and so we're painting in the shadows and leaving the white of the paper to act as the white of the flower, and that is the traditional way that botanical painting approaches painting white flowers. Now I am starting on the leaves, and I'm using the number 4 brush, and this type of brush works really well for covering a large area on watercolor paper. I'm using the MEEDEN 140 pound cold press watercolor paper, and it's nice and absorbent and performs really beautifully, much like the Arches paper, but it's a lot more affordable. So you can see how the color is spreading nicely and getting that soft diffused edge. If you have a hard time getting that soft sort of fuzzy blended out edge in your watercolors and you're wondering what you're doing wrong, you might not be doing anything wrong, and it honestly could be your paper. If you're using inexpensive paper or paper that's not 100% cotton, it will be harder to get this effect. So I highly recommend the MEEDEN cold pressed 140 pound watercolor paper, because you can get a pad for a really reasonable price, and then I just cut it down to fit my nature journal. This is a page I cut down from the 7x10 sized watercolor pad, and it takes quite a few layers, and just as I mentioned before, because it's 100% cotton and the sizing is a nice balance between a bit of texture and smoothness, the colors really blend out quite nicely with not too much effort. And these brushes are good for holding a lot of water for this bigger leaf, but they also have a really fine point, which allows me to switch between spreading and water and blending, as well as placing color in very sort of distinct, exact areas, so that I can leave the first few layers of my washes showing through and just darken the areas that I want more drama on to create that three-dimensional form. And that's the ideal situation for botanical painting, being able to spread a lot of water, but also having that really fine point. So one main tip that I have for painting leaves is to make sure you mix up at least 3 colors, and that there's a light color, a mid-tone color, and a dark color, and that the darker color is quite a lot darker than you think you need it to be, because this is going to allow you to add just a little bit of color and create a lot of drama without using too many brush strokes. As you can see, I've just done here for the sort of central veins of the flower. It's adding a really nice deep color to the veins, and it's starting to make it look like there's some depth to the leaf. And what I do to create this dark color so that I'm always creating a harmonious blend, this is tip number 2, is using the same colors I used for the mid and lighter mix of the leaf and simply adding Holbein neutral tint to it. I say Holbein just because Holbein's neutral tint is transparent, whereas I believe the Winsor and Newton neutral tint is opaque or semi-opaque. So you could also use Payne's Gray. I used to use Payne's Gray by Winsor and Newton before I switched to mostly Daniel Smith and Holbein. But the point of it is that then you get a harmonious blend of colors. So rather than choosing an altogether different green just because it's darker in the tube, use the greens you're already using, whether they're from a tube of green or green you mixed with yellow and blue, and then add neutral tint or Payne's Gray to it so that you continue with that same color palette and it's just a darker version of that color. Now I'm mixing up the colors for the berries, and I am doing the same thing here. I've got the lighter and medium colors, a darker color, and then an even darker color, which is the Crimson Lake, and I added a little bit of neutral tint to it. And again, this is the same reason why I want to keep my color palette the same, and it's sometimes will look really sort of out of place and disjointed if you add a completely different color just because it's darker to create a shadow. So I always use the colors that I already have in my palette and just add something to create that shadowy look. I've switched to the number 1 size MEEDEN brush, and I'm saving a lot of time here. Instead of painting each individual drupule, which is the little segment of the berry, I just painted the whole thing and then lifted out a few highlights because I let the ink sort of create the form for me. And then I've just gone back to the flower with the same number 1 brush, which is really great for adding detail. And I just added a little bit more definition on the edges of the petals. And then to finish this off, I'm just adding that lighter, brighter green to the sepals of the berry. And again, dropping in just touches of darker color closest to where the berry and the sepals meet, because that's where there would be shadow. And so this is really the key to finishing off my 3-step method, is adding very small areas of concentrated color to create higher contrast than I see in my photo. And this is how I sort of get my own sort of 3-dimensional effect without spending tons of time on my paintings, because I am a busy mom. I work in an environmental tech company. So this is sort of what I do on the side, which I love doing this, but I do have lots of other responsibilities I have to tend to. So I figured out a way that I can continue creating and sharing it with you here on YouTube and in the watercolor garden while not taking forever on every painting. And honestly, this just fits my personality better. I love to just sort of get that satisfaction of a finished painting quicker, and I can usually finish my paintings now in 1 or 2 sittings, and that really suits my personality and lifestyle. To finish this off, I'm just adding my beautiful diffused background using the mix of the Botanical Gray, the same color mix I used to create the shadows on the flower, and I'm just wetting the paper and using these beautiful professional MEEDEN brushes. I'm making sure I use the point of the brush to dab the color in first, right in and around the serrations of the leaves, and then spread it out further towards the edge of my wash to create that beautiful effect. And this works really well with this type of mop brush. And that's it. I hope you found these tips useful and you can apply them to your own botanical painting, and I'll see you in the next video. If you're interested in checking out the pro watercolor brushes for yourself, then check out the link in the video description and use code Laura Watson Art to get 12% off your entire order. If you like this video, then thank you so much. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I think that you'll also really enjoy this video where I show you how to paint a buttercup using some of the other supplies from MEEDEN Art.